The fuming and smoldering volcano Popocatépetl of Mexico is an awesome sight. To the ancient Aztecs, a volcano was a special place, as its peak was in close proximity to the gods. Mountaintops, hills and cliffs were other places close to the heavens where sacrifices to gods took place. Human sacrifice, to regenerate the earth by offering life. In ancient times, this may have been a place of sacrifice. The remains of possible victims may lie here. One in particular has puzzled archaeologists, a small, unusual skull. Who was this person, and how did they die? Was this too a victim of the ancient Aztec covenant with the gods?
Was this the site of a temple? Perhaps this was a sacrificial stone where the victims were placed.
There could be ways of putting to death children, like slitting of the throat, that will not leave any marks.
They sacrificed children to the god of rain. The Aztecs believed it was their mission to feed these gods through sacrifice.
Aztec specialist and ethnohistorian Dr. Elizabeth Baquedano has made it her life's work to explore Aztec sacrificial rituals. She believes that an investigation of this unusual skull might help further her understanding of the seemingly cruel religious practices of the Aztec. The story of Aztec sacrifice is set in Mexico, once part of ancient Mesoamerica. The peoples of Mesoamerica were agricultural peoples who developed into an advanced civilization with its own sophisticated artwork, architecture, stone carving, and a macabre cult to the dead. Its capital, Mexico City, is at its heart. Mixquic is a suburb of the capital. Today, it's a shrine to people who come to celebrate the souls of their loved ones on the Day of the Dead, a national holiday held every November. San Andreas Catholic Church, founded at the time of the Spanish conquistadors, is at the heart of the festivities. But this may also have been once the site where the Aztec practiced human sacrifice. The remains of many possible victims are still here. These ancient bones were first excavated in the 1970s and, out of respect, were placed here at this holy site. One in particular intrigues Dr. Baquedano, that of a strange skull that was placed on top of a miscellaneous pile of bones by the priest and his congregation during the previous Day of the Dead. Was this a victim of sacrifice, one of the many Aztec offerings to the gods? Dr. Baquedano is already following some vital clues around the churchyard which explain the presence of the pile of bones.
When I came across this site and I saw the sculptures and the scars, the priest explained that the archaeologists who dug here in the 70s had removed this stone slab and had actually found the offering containing several skulls together with several skeletons.
Dr. Baquedano suspects that these skulls and skeletons, including the one she's investigating, were victims of sacrifice. What's unique about these bones is that they've not ended up as exhibits in a museum, nor have they undergone scientific analysis. Instead, they have been kept within the walls of the churchyard. San Andreas priest, Father Erasmo Martinez, believes his job is to protect the non-Christian souls of these dead, and the skull Dr. Baquedano is investigating is no exception. To the priest, it belongs to an ancestor who should be venerated.
Nuestro pueblo, el pueblo mexicano.
Our people, the Mexican people, is a mixture of two races, and these bones are from our Indian parents. So these bones represent, for our people, a very strong link with the past. Our Catholic Church believes that all human beings are important and wants to give them a place full of respect and rest.
Quiere darles un lugar digno de respeto y de descanso.
This person may have suffered in our eyes a terrible death, but is now a venerated ancestor at rest. What happened here?
So I really need to know, are these skulls of children? Are these female skulls? I want to know, is this a contribution to appeasing the gods of nature? Is this a contribution of children feeding the Lord of the earth?
Could this be the skull of a child killed to feed the Lord of the earth? Dr. Bacadano brings in archaeologist and forensic expert Dr. Javier Urcid, who she hopes will provide some essential facts that may identify the cause of death. His first task will be to make a detailed examination of the bones.
There are a number of things that can be done to address this problem of possible human sacrifice. One of them would be to do a detailed anatomical inventory to determine the number of individuals that are present in the pile. I would also be looking at the age, their sex, and any evidence that would give me a clue as to the way in which they died. I would be looking for evidence of traumatic death.
Dr. Urcid turns his attention to the child's skull to see what it can tell him.
Well, one of the things that could be said about this skull has to do with the age of the individual. Some of the permanent dentition is in the process of erupting. So, for instance, this is the canine tooth that is just below the level of the gum. And on the basis of this criteria, I believe that this individual died at approximately 9 or 10 years of age. Now, given the age assessment, it would be a little bit unreliable for me to provide a sex determination because it is practically impossible to do so with subadults.
So this skull belonged to a child whose short life might have ended on a sacrificial altar. But why were children used as offerings to the gods? What sort of culture required these offerings? The Aztec left a remarkable historical record of their civilization. Precious clues that Dr. Bacadano will use to try to solve the mystery of the Aztec child and the nature of a temple at San Andreas. 10 miles away in the heart of Mexico City is the magnificent Aztec Temple Mayor, one of the greatest archaeological finds of the 20th century. Temple Mayor was founded in AD 1325. It's a wealth of art and artifacts and a magnificent monument to the ancient Aztecs. Here, excavation layer by layer has so far revealed more than 6,000 buried objects, along with racks that held hundreds of skulls of sacrificial victims. This was the spiritual heart of the Aztec world, where human sacrifices to their gods took place.
The Aztecs believed in many gods and goddesses, particularly gods of nature. They believed in the god of rain, in the god of maize, god of water, goddess of fertility, god of the wind. Basically, there was a god for every element. There's nothing more precious than our life. So they offered the most precious material, the most precious vital element which we all have, which is our blood. So by shedding their blood, they were giving the most valuable liquid. They sacrificed children, they sacrificed men, they sacrificed women, and they all contributed with self-sacrifice as well. So the actual function of sacrifice was the most precious food for the gods.
The Aztec believed that the gods only provided if they were nourished by fresh human hearts and blood.
The heart was the symbol of motion, was the symbol of strength, the most important vital organ. So they offered the most important vital organ to the gods. And they placed that offering in special containers called the ego vessels. By giving them hearts, by offering these hearts, they believed that they were feeding the earth and the sun.
But was the site at San Andreas a place of sacrifice? And if the child was sacrificed here, which god demanded such a young life?
The sacrifice that involved children was particularly addressed to the god of rain, to the god who controlled vegetation, who controlled food.
An Aztec tradition of graphic illustration dating from the 12th century is a useful source of information. It recorded the sacrifice in detail, giving evidence of the parents' grief and the children's pain.
We know that the children cried copiously, that they cried and cried. The whole intention was to actually get those tears, because those tears were symbols of rain. And we know that the parents suffered a great deal, but it was a contribution, and everyone had this duty. Every Aztec citizen had to contribute in one way or another with the supernaturals.
The child that Dr. Bacadano was investigating might too have shed tears and blood so the god would provide rain for the rest of the community. For the Aztec, this was an honor. The site where once a potentially dreadful ritual took place is now the site of Christian rituals. A special mass at San Andreas celebrates the journey from childhood to womanhood for one member of Mixquic's community. It was adolescents such as this who, hundreds of years ago, would have been led to a sacrificial altar. Christian symbols of flesh and blood and the celebration of puberty have a particular resonance here, a place that can't escape its history, a place where children may have lost their lives. The traditional Aztec art also shows clearly the methods for the sacrifice of children.
By looking at some examples of Aztec art, we can determine that the way they proceed to extract the heart was by making a horizontal incision in the chest. Now, this would have quite an implication in terms of the skeleton, because the sternum would have to be cut. Here's the sternum, and this bone is intact. So I would say that this particular individual was not sacrificed. But, it does not necessarily imply that there might be other evidence.
One of the other skulls in the pile has a dramatic feature that indicates only one thing to Dr. Ursid.
This is a very interesting skull because both temporal bones on the sides of the skull are perforated, which is the typical signature of skulls that have been removed from a skull rack.
The heads of sacrificial victims were displayed on racks, some holding hundreds of skulls. This skull must have been displayed this way.
The other interesting observation one can make on this skull is the fact that the individual had its head intentionally reshaped. This reshaping was accomplished by placing boards both on the frontal bone as well as on the back part, which is the occipital bone. And this procedure was done early in life, during the first years of life.
The perforations paint the clearest picture for Dr. Ursid.
So this is perhaps the most solid evidence that one can muster to argue that at least some of these remains could be the result of sacrificial rituals.
The skull undergoing forensic examination doesn't have skull rack perforations, but was also intentionally reshaped when the child was alive.
We can see the practice of intentional reshaping, both from the frontal perspective, which basically entails a broadening of the skull, and also if you look at it in profile, you will see again this flattening of the forehead and the flattening in the back of the head. I'm very much limited in my ability to determine if this individual was particularly the result of human sacrifice. But I would definitely would like to talk to Elizabeth to find more clues.
The intentional reshaping of the skull tells Dr. Ursid that the child died in pre-Hispanic times when this custom was manifest. This was also a period when ritual sacrifice was common. So, could this child have been the victim of Aztec sacrifice? 700 years ago, some of these Mexican children might have been sacrificed alive to Aztec gods. Today, they and the villagers of Mixquic in the suburb of Mexico City are caretakers of this past. Monuments to sacrifice are scattered around the grounds of San Andreas Church. This may have been the very altar on which the child died. Father Martinez of San Andreas may be able to help Dr. Baquedano find out what might have happened to the child the day he died and explain the motive to his murder.
So, is it possible that a boy or a girl was sacrificed here, that his or her body was placed here and then decapitated, or the heart taken out? Was it possible?
Es muy probable.
It's very possible, and also it would be very interesting to make deep research into the culture.
¿Cómo eran los sacrificios? ¿Cómo y por qué se realizaban?
Why were these sacrifices made? What was their intention?
Si nos ponemos en su contexto, podremos comprender que
If we put ourselves in their context, we could then understand that it was not as savage and wild as it seems, that it was their way to see life. It was their way to communicate with their gods, whether mighty and powerful.
And also we can see hearts, and that could be evidence of sacrifice.
quizá lo que hacían era ofrendar al Dios.
Yes, they would offer their hearts to the gods, because it is in the heart where life resides.
The Aztec were an agricultural people, and good harvests were a matter of life and death. Appeasing the gods of nature, of the sun, of the earth, was vital. Human sacrifice to these gods may have been carried out on this very spot. Children were sacrificed to different gods for different reasons. Some were on the brink of puberty, and their blood was spilt as an offering to the god of fertility. Others were killed for their tears, offered to the god of rain. They and their families would have been honored that their children had been chosen. Sacrifice could take many forms. One method began when the child would have been given some sort of hallucinogenic drug to remove them from reality and numb the pain. But the climax was yet to come: death. The chest was cut horizontally with a sharp flint knife, the heart removed, the head decapitated to produce as much blood as possible. The god's need for sustenance was insatiable. The church's huge font is an extraordinary phenomenon that represents a fascinating relationship between past and present. It is now used for baptism, the Christian celebration of life. It may, as Father Martinez concludes, have been used as part of the Aztec ritual that celebrated the continuation of life through death.
Esta pieza se utilizaba para colocar aquí.
According to history, this font was used for holding the hearts and blood of the victim when sacrificed to the god of the earth.
Esta pila servía para contener.
So in the olden days, this font was used for these offerings, so the earth would be fruitful. Later, it was here that people would be baptized, so they would be fruitful in their Christian life.
An ancient image of death that celebrates life. The child may well have been sacrificed on the altar and his blood poured into this font. Dr. Baquedano hopes the forensic skills of Dr. Javier Urcid may be able to pick out some vital clues amongst this mountain of skeletal remains. Dr. Baquedano wonders whether the evidence points to this once being a temple and perhaps a place of human sacrifice. She wants to know if Dr. Urcid has come to any conclusions about the fate of the child.
The first observation is that you have bones from all parts of the skeleton. So that brings the important question of how were they placed before they eventually came to form this pile of bones. Aside from the mystery of the original archaeological context, what I can tell you is that there are a number of individuals, both sexes are represented. In terms of the age range, you have from very small children to senior adults.
Dr. Urcid has calculated the approximate number of individuals here by the number of femora, thigh bones that he's been able to see in the pile.
I counted something in the order of 24 femora. If you consider that each individual has a pair of femora, then it means that there are at least 12 individuals represented here, but only in the outer part of the pile. Other anatomical elements that I would like to look carefully at would be long bones, particularly in the case of child sacrifice, to see if there is any evidence of cut marks. So for instance, if you come to this side of the pile, there's a whole bunch of remains that, because of their immature state of development, were certainly from a child.
And, so these are all children's bones?
Yes, and they might be from the same individual. Looking at the long bones, again, I don't see any evidence of cut marks.
And it would also be the same age?
Yes, it looks like
from someone who was 6 or 7 years of age?
Well, I would have to do other kinds of analysis in order to assess the particular ages of all these individual bones.
But the crucial object for analysis is the child's skull. Dr. Ursid explains his findings to Dr. Baccadano.
What I could tell you then is the age at death of the individual, which was between 9 and 10 years of age. I can also tell you that the skull had been reshaped, intentionally reshaped, by applying boards in the forehead and also in the back of the skull. By applying this force selectively during the first years of age, you can attain this reshaping.
They are particularly interested in the unusual reshaping of the head, as it indicates that the child lived and died in the period when sacrifice was commonplace. Are there any physical signs of sacrificial mutilation on the skull?
I don't have really any criteria to go by and determine what was the actual cause of death. No. There are no evidence of cut marks. But again, there could be ways of putting to death children, like slitting of the throat, that will not leave any osteological marks. So not finding that evidence does not necessarily imply that some of these remains could not be the result of human sacrifice. So we still have quite a puzzle and a mystery to solve.
Yes.
Dr. Baccadano's journey will continue, but her research into the life of this child has produced significant evidence that may indicate that this site was indeed a place for death rituals and child sacrifice.
Well, the mystery goes on. We don't know whether this child was male or female. We know through the help of forensic studies that this particular child was either 9 or 10 years of age. We know that without the bones and the rest of the skeleton, we can't really tell how he died. We don't have the vertebrae to tell whether he had been decapitated.
But what we do know is that these remains, and those of many others, are in a place that could be associated with Aztec sacrifice. The child was possibly a victim.
What we know is there is this cycle of life and death, birth and regeneration.
For the people of Mixquic, the simple mosaic of bones is a momentous symbol of times past. The child is one of their respected ancestors who met his death before his time. The grounds in which their church stands has an ancient history. Here, lives were taken for the sake of fertility and regeneration, and the cycle of life, birth, marriage, and death is celebrated by Mexicans still today.